All right, let's jump right into it. In this explainer, we're stepping back in time to explore a really chilling, deeply layered short story called Bororo. We are heading straight into the heart of 1980s Maiduguri, and we're going to see how a vibrant, incredibly peaceful afternoon just completely unravels into a tragic, meticulously calculated act of vengeance. Basically, it's a tale of two mothers, a horrific accident, and the devastating, unimaginable cost of a debt that was never truly paid. You know, to really grasp what we're looking at today, there's this haunting observation from a 13-year-old character in our story named Mhum. She says they are often layered like matryoshka dolls, with different versions when you look deeper. And man, does that perfectly set the stage for the hidden, psychological darkness we're about to unpack. People, much like the events we're going to cover, often present this shiny, perfect outer shell that masks a way darker reality underneath. Section 1. The Illusion of Perfection. Okay, so picture this. It's a sunny Sunday in 1980s Maiduguri. The weather is warm, it's airy, and our protagonist, Doshima, is living in what feels like absolute domestic bliss. Her kids are behaving perfectly. Her husband is out of the way, fast asleep in the parlor after a few beers, listening to the BBC on his transistor radio. And Doshima? She's just blissfully relaxed. She's planning her school lesson notes, humming to herself, and applying bright red nail polish. It's idyllic, right? But here's the thing. She is totally, completely oblivious to the fact that the consequences of her past are literally standing right outside her front gate. And that brings us to this incredibly stark contrast. Inside, you have Doshima in her safe, privileged, completely insulated little bubble. But suddenly, that bubble gets popped. Her young daughter, Iram, runs in and says there's a strange woman standing at the gate, just staring at the house. This silent, unmoving intruder completely shatters the perfect Sunday vibe. So Doshima has to cap her red nail polish, get up, and face this total unknown. Now, when she opens the door, this isn't just any random visitor. Doshima is met by a tall, thin Bororo woman, dressed in dark clothing. And her appearance is honestly mesmerizing. Her hair is intricately styled in these four-part Bororo plaits, and she has this dramatic black kohl drawn in a solid line from her forehead all the way down to her nose and then again from her bottom lip to her chin. But the wildest part? Her eyes. They're this hypnotic, translucent blue and gray. Plus, as she moves, she leaves behind this really distinct, musky, smoky scent. So the woman introduces herself. She just says, "I plait hair. Zaina. I played it very well." Now, Doshima is still totally lulled by her sunny Sunday, and she's kind of captivated by Zaina's unique beauty, so she doesn't think twice about it. She casually tells Zaina to come back next week to do her daughter's hair. But Mhum, that 13-year-old we talked about earlier, she instantly gets the creeps. She feels this creeping unease, sensing something really dark about Zaina. Doshima, of course, completely dismisses it as just teenage imagination. But watch how fast this escalates over the next week. We start with that weird, quiet encounter at the gate on Sunday. Then, by Friday, we're hitting terrifying premonitions. And that all leads straight into the fateful hair plaiting appointment on the following Sunday. That peaceful 1980s illusion we talked about, yeah, it's rapidly cracking. I mean, the warning signs are literally flashing neon red at this point. On Friday night, little Iram runs into her mom's room just screaming. She had this horrific nightmare where, in her words, a very tall shadow was watching this house. It grabbed my hair and cut off my head. That is incredibly specific and absolutely terrifying. But how does Doshima react? Well, she completely brushes it off. She tells herself, "Oh, the kids were just watching that scary movie Children of the Corn while I was at work." She literally soothes the kid back to sleep and completely ignores this massive screaming red flag. Section 2. The tragic climax. So we roll around to the next Sunday, outside under the tree in the yard, and the timing here is just fatal. Doshima tells Mhum to stay outside and keep an eye on little Iram while Zaina works. But then, well, actually, scratch that. First, Doshima retreats into the house, into the kitchen. Then Mhum, who is the protective older sister and the only one who actually suspected Zaina, leaves the yard to go use the restroom. Within seconds, all the protective layers around Iram are totally stripped away. Zaina is now left completely unguarded with the little girl. As Zaina gets ready to plait the hair, she pulls out this long iron spike to part the strands. But as she looks down at Iram, everything changes. This profound, devastating psychological shift happens. Zaina realizes that Iram looks exactly like her own lost daughter, Fajimatu. Fajimatu who could never sit still. Fajimatu whose little hands used to soothe Zaina. Looking at this child triggers an absolute flood of agonizing memories. Zaina's heart starts pounding, her hands start shaking, and the whole energy of the scene just drops. Section 3. The motive of memories. To really understand the absolute horror of what happens next, we have to pull apart the layers of that Matryoshka doll and look at Zaina's past. One day, Zaina was sick in bed, waiting for her daughter Fadimatsu to come back from the market. When she didn't return, Zaina forced herself out to search the streets. She found a crowd gathering. She pushed her way through to the front and saw a blood-splashed car. The driver was a crying woman with her own kids sitting safely in the back seat. And right there on the road, Zaina saw Fadimatsu, crushed and lifeless. And here is the truly sickening irony of this whole story. That crying driver, the woman who hit Fadimatsu? Yep, it was Doshima. Doshima used her wealth, her family's position, to just pay off the police. She paid off the courts. She literally bought her way out of a hit and run, escaping justice while Zaina was left with nothing. Doshima moved on to her peaceful Sundays and her bright red nail polish, but Zaina did not move on. She bided her time, and over the years, her unbearable grief just calcified into the singular, burning need for vengeance. So, snapping back to the present under that peaceful yard tree, driven by the memory of her crushed child, Zaina takes that long iron hair-plaiting spike and she sinks it directly into little Iram's skull. It happens so fast. It's a brutal, visceral act of revenge. A blood-curdling scream rips through the yard, bringing Doshima running out of the house, but it's way, way too late. Zaina has taken her terrifying pound of flesh. The aftermath is just pure chaos. A crowd gathers, people are raining blows down on Zaina, and she gets thrown into the back of a police van. But the truly tragic part, Zaina feels absolutely zero physical pain from the crowd. She doesn't even see the police. Her mind has completely fractured under the weight of her grief and what she just did. She's entirely consumed by the vision of her lost daughter. In that moment, all she sees is Fadimatsu. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. When the scales of justice are broken by corruption, who ultimately pays the price? Dojima used her money to erase a deadly mistake, honestly believing she had just bought herself a peaceful life. But when deadly actions can just be swept under the rug by wealth, what horrors are we unknowingly inviting right up to our front gates? It's a pretty chilling reminder that buried sins rarely stay buried forever. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep analyzing, keep looking deeper, and we'll see you in the next explainer.